this immediately. 10 out of 10. Are you kidding me? I'm just gonna use this to project my fantasy of owning a bookstore slash cafe until I can own a real one. For eldest daughters of immigrant parents, this is a love letter for you too. It was like the baby's first thriller novel. Hi everyone, welcome or welcome back. My name is May and I have a problem. I've been in school, I've been doing my work, I've been doing my assignments. The only thing is I have not stopped putting things on hold at the library. So now I have accumulated several books that may or may not need to be returned soon. Today I'm going to read the first chapter of every book on my library TBR and then rank them by how much I want to read them, so then I can actually clear out the books that I don't want to read and read the ones that I actually do. This is what the TBR shelf is looking like right now. Today we are going to be hopefully clearing out most of the books from here. I got this idea from Kayla's video, Books and Lala on YouTube, where she read through, well, her TBR shelf is like way bigger than mine, but the concept is the same. So I'm gonna link her video in the description if you want to watch that as well. It was very informative, and I also did add some to my books on my TBR shelf because of that video. The first book is Significant Others by Zoe Eisenberg. Do you ever watch like booktuber videos, booktuber recommendation videos, and then just put a whole bunch of things into your library holds and then they all come at once and you're like, I did not think about this. I don't remember who recommended this, but it sounded really interesting, so obviously I had to put it on hold. And this one's like a kind of contemporary fiction, I think is that what it's called. That was 13 pages long. This book is about two women named Jess and Ren who were roommates in college, but they have kind of built their friendship over 18 years. And you can kind of tell it's like a little bit codependent. One of the lines in the chapter was, by the new year, if one of us arrived somewhere without the other, friends and classmates would ask why, as if the presence of only one of us created a hole in the shape of the other. Now they're in their late 30s. They own a beachfront home together in Hawaii. They have a dog together, and they have inadvertently centered their lives around each other. Jess has her own real estate brokerage, and Ren is very charismatic but doesn't really have an aim in life. But she gets pregnant after a one-night stand with a tourist. So Jess and Ren make a plan to raise a child together until the baby's father comes back. And Jess realizes that for the first time in 18 years, they might not want the same thing. Speaking as someone who has experienced and was in kind of a friendship where, you know, it's May and this person, or this person and May, I wouldn't have said our relationship was codependent, but for sure, like, if you're talking about one of us, you would inadvertently talk about the other person, which is kind of an experience. It felt like we were twins, but also not quite to that level. It's just interesting to read about in that kind of book. I think I would give that maybe like a 7.5, I think. It was interesting, but it wasn't like immediately gripping, but I can tell that later shit's probably gonna hit the fan. Next is The Lake House by Sarah Beth Durst. This is a mystery novel, like a mystery thriller novel. It says Harper Teen, so this might be YA, which is really good if you are kind of in like a reading slump, because it just makes you turn the page so fast. Like, it's so easy to read. That was a shorter chapter. I think that was like 9, yeah, that was 10 pages. This does definitely read like a YA. Like, I read this one much faster than I read Significant Others, and it's also like easier to read. This is in Claire's point of view. Reva and Mariana are the other two who came with her. They were latecomers to the camp, which is called the Lake House. They were a day late because there was bad weather, so everyone else is already at the camp. They're the last 3 to come. It's setting it up in a way that their parents seem strangely obsessed with the idea of sending them to this camp. even though they had never talked about it before. So there's kind of that interesting mystery aspect to it. And then at the end of the chapter, I can tell you about this because it's literally in the blurb about the book. But yeah, the lake house is on fire. Oh, the lake house was on fire, and now it's just a blackened husk. There were no survivors except the 3 that arrived late, and the person who dropped them off had already left. He's not coming back till August. They have no Wi-Fi, no means of communication. It's just them 3 and nobody else. The dead bodies of all of their their peers. And then they have to follow the mystery of like what happened to their fellow campers. Campers, that's the word. My god, peers. They have to figure out what happened to their fellow campers and also try not to get killed themselves. It is very fast paced. Everything that you see in the blurb has already happened in the first chapter, which was 10 pages long. That was pretty good, honestly. I'd give that an 8, I think. Obviously, Bell Hooks is a very renowned Black feminist theorist, so I borrowed this originally because I also borrowed Everything I Know About Love by Dolly Alderton, but then I had to return it, so I was like, oh, what other books are kind of like in that kind of same vein about learning about love? So Bell Hooks. There's a preface here, so I'll read the preface and the introduction. Okay, that took a while. I read both the preface and the introduction, which was XXIX, 29 pages. I read a little bit of the preface and I was like, oh, this is kind of like a 9.5. But then I was like, is it a 10? I'm like, I'm not really sure. I feel like I get anxious whenever I give something full marks. Like, I almost never rate books 5 out of 5. That's just like a personal thing. I'm working on it, okay? This, immediately, 10 out of 10. Are you kidding me? Oh my god. There was this one part. She's citing another author's work. It's called When All You've Ever Wanted Isn't Enough by Harold Kushner. I am afraid that we may be raising a generation of young people who will grow up afraid to love, afraid to give themselves completely to another person because they will have seen how much it hurts to take the risk of loving and have it not work out. I'm afraid they'll grow up looking for intimacy without risk, for pleasure without significant emotional investment. They will be so fearful of the pain of disappointment that they will forego the possibilities of love and joy. This book was written when? 2001. That applies so much more today. Tortured Poets Department just came out. Like, that shit is all about situationships. That is such a prevalent problem in young people's relationships where they're like, oh, I don't really want to commit because I don't want to make myself vulnerable with someone. So, but like, I want to commit to this one person. So it's like, you're just kind of in like this unknown territory of, well, we're kind of together, but like, we don't really want to put a label on it, but like, technically you're allowed to see other people, but like, I don't really want to because I want to be committed to this person, but oh, it's just such a freaking mess. It's so prevalent even today. Yeah, this is a 10. Immediately a 10. Like, I can't believe I even questioned giving it a 9.5. Yeah, I'm reading this immediately. And then She Started It by Sean Gilbert. I'm so sorry if I pronounced that wrong. This is also a mystery thriller novel. I think Books with Lala recommended. No, she didn't recommend this. I don't think she actually liked this. But it sounded interesting to me, so I borrowed it. Okay, that was interesting. It starts off with a prologue that's 1.5 pages long, so I just read the first chapter as well. So this follows Annabelle, Esther, Tanya, and Chloe, and Poppy. They used to be friends as children, but Poppy was always kind of the odd one out of the group. They always made fun of her, and they didn't stay in contact with her until recently when she contacted them to invite them to her bachelorette party on a private island in the Bahamas, first class plane ticket, everything is paid for. So they're like, obviously we're gonna go. The four are still very close. Well, close. This is one of those books where I think you're not supposed to like any of the characters. The only thing is that it's hard to draw a line between unlikable but interesting characters and unlikable and uninteresting characters, and I feel like this kind of falls into the latter. I don't know. Overall, it is kind of setting up a mystery. I just don't know if I am that interested in that mystery. So I'll give this a 5.5. And then we have House of Hunger by Alexis Henderson. This is also historical vampire novel. That was also 11 pages. This is a sapphic romance? It's a sapphic novel. It's kind of funny because when I was checking this out, the librarian who was like behind the desk, she was like, oh, I love that. And I was like, oh, is it a good book? She was like, no, I just love the dress on the cover. I was like, honestly, yeah, she's right. It's gorgeous. I just thought she had read the book. This follows Marion, who works as a scullery maid at a noble lady's house. She's very disillusioned. She lives in the slums. She's lived a very difficult life so far. She sees an advertisement in the newspaper about a blood maid, which is, if you've ever read Vampire Academy, it's kind of like the same concept. I think they call them blood whores in that novel, which is a little bit rude, I think, but concept's the same. So far, I can't tell if this actually is about vampires or if it's about humans consuming blood in general. So by the end of the first chapter, we see that she is kind of considering becoming a blood maid because you do live an opulent life. You live alongside the nobles of the north in this novel. The nobles drink the blood of the blood maids because they think there are healing properties in the blood which can be used as remedies for whatever ailments they have. I think I'd give it a 7. Yeah. I'm not sure if I'm going to read this again. I'm not really in a fantasy mood right now, but if you like, I still don't know if this is a vampire novel or not, but there's gonna be a lot of blood and blood drinking. So vampire adjacent, I think, is a pretty good way of describing the novel. Vampire adjacent sapphic novel. I don't know if it's a romance. I can't tell at this point, but it seems very interesting if you're interested in that. Then we have Spoiler Alert by Olivia Dade. I think this is the only romantic comedy I have in this pile. I don't remember who recommended this, but it looks really cute. It's about an actor and a cosplayer of the actor's TV show. This dedication is so cute. To everyone who's ever doubted, as I did, someone who looks like you can be desired. Someone who looks like you can be loved. Someone who looks like you can have a happy ending. I swear it. That's so sweet. Okay, that was really cute. This one follows Marcus, who is an actor. He plays Aeneas on the biggest show on television. This was 13 pages long. Oh, 14. You can see Marcus kind of struggling with his character of Aeneas because he so vehemently hates how they have written his character at the very end of the season. Just kind of completely contradicts everything that had happened in the previous seasons. Honestly, this reminds me a lot of the last season of Game of Thrones. I never personally watched it, but I do know that there was a bunch of discourse around Daenerys' character arc, just completely contradicting everything that had happened in the previous seasons. So I think it does draw some inspiration from that. Marcus is also a fanfic writer. He's like a stan about the book version of his character, which he thinks is so much better than his, not his portrayal, but like how the writers have written his character in the show. He has a connection with someone called Lavinia's Unapologetic Lavinia Stan, which is the woman that his character is married to. And he also has to upkeep his kind of persona as an actor. He's kind of like a himbo, just like very attractive face, but like zero thoughts in that brain. The lights are on, but nobody is home kind of vibe, you know? But he's actually super intelligent. He's good at the physical part of his job. He's really good at using a sword. He's good at riding horses. He's very dedicated to his craft as an actor, but his persona, which has gotten him this far, is like himbo character. But the person behind Unapologetic Lavinia Stan is April Whittier, who is a fanfic writer and beta reader for Marcus's online persona. And she shows off like her own plus size take on a cosplay of Lavinia, which kind of goes viral. So Marcus takes her out on a date to basically just say like, fuck you to the internet haters who are like, Lavinia is not plus size. It's so like inaccurate to the book. But they don't know that they are the other person that they've been talking to online for years now. So there's kind of like that kind of secret that they have to overcome, which I assume is going to be like the climax of the novel. This is really cute. There's a lot of swearing in this, which maybe if you're not super inclined to that, this would kind of like throw you off a little bit. Personally, I like it just because that's who I am. Objectively, maybe like a 6.5, a 7. Subjectively, probably a 7.5. I feel like this is the kind of book that I need to be reading right now just to get over this kind of reading slump that I'm in. Something like lighthearted. I have Black Friend Essays by ᴅᴢ, a pop culture commentary and personal stories which grapple with her own brackets misunderstanding of identity. Where did I even... I don't know why I borrowed this, but I have it, so I will read the first chapter at the very least. This was 14 pages long and basically details ᴅᴢ's particular experience with being a Black woman and kind of shaping her identity as a Black woman. I really liked the introduction where it was like, Black women are continuously the Black friend that is meant to support the non-Black protagonist's more complex humanity. And she says, I do not exist just to move plot. While I am a supportive friend, I'm not a supporting character. I am the protagonist of my perfectly imperfect story. Obviously, in a bunch of movies and shows, maybe less so today, but I still wouldn't really go that far to say that I truly believe that. Just like the Black character is just, her personality is being Black and being stereotypically Black to the protagonist's whiteness or whatnot. She is her own person outside of being Black. That's not her entire personality. The only thing worse than being the only Black person in a room is being one of 2 Black people in a room who look nothing alike, constantly being misidentified by everyone around them. Her teacher had asked her and her other Black classmate if they were sisters. Hello? Like, what do you mean? They have different names, they look nothing alike. I really like this because it's kind of detailing her specific experience as a Black woman. Obviously, Black women are not a monolith, Black people are not a monolith, but I think it is good to read about experiences from people who are different from you so that you can learn and grow as like a better, more understanding person, which can only make the world better, you know? So I think I would give this an 8.5. This is Cultish, The Language of Fanaticism by Amanda Montell. I think the Book Leo recommended this. Jack Edwards might have also recommended this. It's basically about what makes cults so intriguing and frightening, what makes them so powerful. That was 9 pages. That was super interesting. Okay, so the first chapter follows these 2 women that the author has interviewed. One of them was part of the 3HO organization, which hosts Kundalini yoga classes all over the US. And then the other one was part of CrossFit, which I did not know would be considered a cult. That's interesting. And it basically talks about how language is a technique used in cults or other organizations kind of like this, how they will use specific phrases and words to create their own language within that organization. So even though they're speaking English in this case, the words are in English, but the meanings behind them are different. It establishes an us and a them to align collective values. You don't necessarily have to be like okay, honestly, you could probably tell what bias and comeback means just from context clues, but you would not be able to know what ending fairy means, and honestly, I do not even want to explain it. Next is the 12-week year. Get more done in 12 weeks than others do in 12 months. This is another nonfiction by Brian P. Moran and Michael Lennington. This one I've seen in the beginning of the year. I saw a couple of videos about this book, and they're just kind of like summarizing it and how they were going to apply it to their lives. Also nonfiction, not really sure if I'm going to read this because I'm not really a nonfiction girly, but for some reason I have like 4 nonfiction books. Your eyes are bigger than your attention span, I guess. That was 6 pages long. It was just like the introduction about the book. And the main thing this book wants to tackle is most people feel maybe unfulfilled in their lives, or they're content enough with their lives, but they just think that they could do better. The introduction talks about the problem of execution. Most people know how to get to like a higher point or how to make their life more satisfying. They just don't execute it because they think that it'll take too much work, too much time, resources. This book kind of wants to tackle how to implement their ideas and actually execute them in a way that is beneficial for them. Most people know how to get back in shape, eat better, exercise more, they just don't do it. It's not a knowledge problem, it's an execution problem, which I agree with to an extent, but also it doesn't really take into account socioeconomic status of a person. Like, this book, I feel, is targeted very much towards middle class, may or may not be racialized, probably has a post-secondary education, maybe has a full-time job that pays pretty well, and it just kind of like expands on how they can make their life better. But I feel like if you are of a lower socioeconomic status, this book probably isn't for you, because this book assumes that you have the time, resources, energy to get into this higher like life state, but it doesn't really take into account if you're working at a job that is not fulfilling and you get home and you're just exhausted all the time. Like, there's no way you can implement. Of course, all change requires some amount of sacrifice. I'm just saying that some people have a greater predisposition to being able to make those sacrifices for positive change. I don't know, I just find it a little bit hard to separate success from socioeconomic status that you have. I mean, I'm still pretty interested. They did market this book pretty well. So I think I'd maybe give it a 6.5, 7. 6.75 I think is a pretty, I'm okay with that rating. This one I borrowed recently. It's called Welcome to the Hyunam-dong Bookshop by ᴅ쏘일ɪ, translated by Shana Tan. This is a cozy slice of life book that takes place in a bookstore slash cafe, which, like, what 20 or 30 something that likes books and also coffee hasn't thought about opening their own bookstore slash cafe? So I'm very intrigued by this. I'm probably not gonna read it immediately because I just borrowed this a few days ago. So, but if it rates highly, then I guess I'll have to. The first chapter was only 3 pages long. It's called What Makes a Good Bookshop, which is so cute. Okay, this book is about Yeonju. She did everything she was supposed to. Go to school, marry a decent man, get a respectable job, and then it fell apart. Then she decides to abandon her old life and follow her dream of opening up a bookshop. It's the dream, really. You can live vicariously through this book before you're able to open your own bookstore slash cafe. As of, well, it was only 3 pages, but I really liked it so far. So I think I'll give it an 8. I also have a couple ebooks I borrowed from Libby. I have Wildfire by Hannah Grace, and I have How to End a Love Story by Yulin Kwang. Hi, it's the next day. If I look beat, it's because I am. I finished reading the first chapter of Wildfire. It starts off with Russ's point of view, and it's probably my fault because this is the second book in a series, I think. I never read Icebreaker, but we are introduced to like 6 people, and I cannot keep track of them. I was so confused the entire chapter. I'm like, who are these people? So that's probably my fault. I think this is technically counted as a standalone, like you can read it on its own without having to read Icebreaker. It's just that I didn't. So that is my fault. That is a subjective confusion. So this is dual POV. Russ is gonna go to Honey Acres as a camp counselor instead of staying in Miami with his friends. It kind of alludes to him having like some sort of inner turmoil. Like he's kind of shy, kind of closed off kind of person. And it's within this group of people that he's really found his true friends. He kind of reminds me of the love interest in Abby Jimenez's Part of Your World, I think. The one with the doctors. Kind of reminds me of that because they're both kind of like socially anxious. Alludes to his father having some sort of gambling problem. His mom enables his father, so he doesn't want to spend time with his family like at all. He needs to get away to Honey Acres to just like start clean for the summer at least. The banter is not bad. I wouldn't say it's like absolutely amazing, but it is very like college kids talking to each other, which I assume is what the author was going for, so that part is realistic. I think I would give this maybe a 6. Which sounds really bad. I promise I probably am going to read this because this is just from Russ's point of view. We haven't even gone to like what it says on the back of the novel. 2 people who had a one-night stand with each other meet up again at the summer camp that they're both camp counselors for. So I was like, it's kind of intriguing. But just this first chapter, because I haven't read the first book, I assume is just extremely confusing for me. So subjective, but that's how it is. These rankings are all subjective, you know. You can read these books on your own if you feel so inclined to. Oh, it's like that, huh? The dedication says, for eldest daughters of immigrant parents, this is a love letter for you too. I'm not an eldest daughter, but I'm intrigued already. That's a hell of a first line. Holy shit. Wait, what is this book about? I don't actually remember. Two writers with a complicated history end up working on the same TV show. That's what it is. Okay, that was a hell of a chapter. That was only 3 pages long on the ebook. This takes place at Helen's sister's funeral. Her name is Michelle. He was driving, he's 18, and her 16-year-old sister jumped in front of his car, and technically he killed her, but it looks like she did it on purpose. Grant comes in late to the funeral to pay his respects, but her parents are still grieving, and even Helen is still grieving, so they kick him out of the funeral. It wasn't his fault, but naturally the family doesn't want him there. I bet you like that, Helen thinks, daring her sister to respond. I bet that was your favorite part of your whole funeral. Definitely some tensions between Helen and her sister Michelle. I don't know if they had like a contentious relationship with each other, or if Helen just blames Michelle for what she did. But it was an extremely dark first chapter, but I do have to say that I am extremely intrigued. The next chapter starts 13 years later, I think. I would give this maybe a 7.5. I think I will continue reading this. And then the very last one is The Reappearance of Rachel Price by Holly Jackson. I didn't really love A Good Girl's Guide to Murder, just because I feel like, how do I put this? It was like baby's first thriller novel. Like I read some pretty messed up things since I was in my formative years. So Good Girl's Guide to Murder was kind of like, it's a good introduction to thriller, but because I have read so much messed up thriller, it was kind of like baby to me. So this one is a different series, obviously. So it might be interesting. I'm not sure. Is this still YA? If it's still YA, I feel like I might not like this. I don't think it tells you the genre. I am intrigued at the very least. I borrowed it, so I guess I'll see what it's all about. Okay, that was 9 pages long. We're following Annabelle, as she's being interviewed for a documentary about her missing mom, Rachel Price. She was not even 2 when her mom disappeared. Belle was left in the car when her mom disappeared, and then she was found by someone who was driving by. So she doesn't know anything about the disappearance because she was not even 2 yet. Like, I can't even remember what I had for dinner yesterday. Like, how can people expect her to remember something that happened before she was even 2? It doesn't seem like she necessarily has resentment towards her mother for leaving them. Everyone else on social media or in their small town is like caught up in the mystery of what happened to Rachel Price. Like, what happened? Why did she leave? How did she leave? Because it was under like pretty mysterious circumstances. I assume her mom comes back because that's what the book is called. It basically talks about how she has grown up in the shadow of her mom. She's introduced as like, this is Annabelle, Rachel's daughter, or her dad is introduced as, this is Rachel's husband. Like, her family has been constantly in the shadow of her mom's disappearance for 18 years or 16 years? 16. And how that has kind of like affected her. It was kind of interesting. I think I'd maybe give this like a 6. I still can't tell if this is young adult or not. I think it is. This does remind me of A Good Girl's Guide to Murder, kind of in that same writing style. So I'm not sure if I'm going to continue this just because I didn't totally love A Good Girl's Guide to Murder. If you did like it, then I think this will be pretty good as well. Hello again, everyone. It's a few days later, and now I can finally rank all of the books that I read the first chapter of. I'm gonna rank them from bottom to top. So the books whose first chapter I liked the least, and then the ones I liked the most. So the ones at the bottom, I'm gonna return to the library so that other people can read them. And then the ones at the top, I will keep for myself and read. Let's go. The first one is She Started It. I just feel like there's a very thin line between unlikable characters that are interesting and unlikable characters that are not. And I fear that this one, these characters are not interesting. I gave this a 5.5, and I'm going to return it to the library. Second last is Wildfire. Like I said again, a lot of characters, kind of confusing for me. I'm probably still gonna read it, but not immediately. Probably gonna return it to the library for a little bit, and then I'll check it out again when I want a romance. Next is Reappearance of Rachel Price. I think this is a bit too young adult for me. I don't think I'm going to like it very much. It just came out, so it's a very popular book, so I'm just gonna send it off to the next person who I'm sure really wants to read it. It's not doing anyone any favors by me keeping it. We're getting into the novels that are like actually interesting now. Next is The 12-Week Year. It's interesting enough. I think I will read it at some point. It's just not for me right now. And I also have a lot more nonfiction books that I want to read. So this one that I'm kind of like, I'm just gonna send it off to the next person. House of Hunger is another historical fiction that might also be fantasy. I think this one's fantasy. This one also seems really interesting, and I'm just not really in the mood for a historical fiction right now. So I'm gonna send it off. I feel like historical fiction is a really good fall, winter kind of reading genre. So I might pick it up back then. Next is How to End a Love Story. This one is really interesting. What did I give this? It's really interesting. I quite liked it. 7.5. Yeah, we're getting into like the quite good books now. I do really want to read, even though there are books higher ranked. I might also read this like right after I finish filming, because I think I have 1 day left of my loan, because it's an ebook. So I don't think I can renew it because there's so many other people who are behind me. So I know that's not really the point of this video. Like, I should be reading my highest ranked books. This is just a case of like priority though, because who knows how long I'm gonna have to wait to be able to pick this up again. It seems kind of dark for a romantic comedy. I am kind of in the mood for a romantic comedy, but I'm not sure this is the one to satiate that craving. The next is Spoiler Alert, which is a romantic comedy. I really like this one too. I gave this a 7.5 again. This one just seems like an easy read. I really like the kind of relationship the main male character has with his coworker and just like the staff around him. He seems really unhappy about how his kind of character arc went. So I'm excited to see how he talks about that with his online friend who he meets later. Yeah, I'm excited to read it. I'm probably going to read that soon as well. Next is Significant Others. This one was, I don't know what it is about the kind of like codependent relationships. I really like reading them, but I would absolutely hate to be in one. It's just very intriguing to me. It kind of reminds me of just that genre of two women just like fucking shut up. So I am intrigued. I'm probably going to return it just because I don't think I'm going to be reading it anytime soon, but it'll definitely be at the top of my list. Next is Welcome to the Hyunam-dong bookstore. Welcome to the Hyunam-dong bookshop. That's what it is called. Yes, this one is just so cozy. I love the idea of it. I love the execution so far. I'm just gonna use this to project my fantasy of owning a bookstore / cafe until I can own a real one. Highly recommend if you are also of the same mind. Next is The Lake House. This one is intriguing to me. When I was looking back at the footage to remember what my rankings were, I gave this an 8, which I was genuinely surprised about. I didn't remember it being as good as I ranked it, but I gave it an 8 for a reason. I don't think I'm wrong. It's just I don't remember what happened really, but it's YA, which means it's probably going to be a page turner. It's going to be very fast paced. It's also a mystery / thriller, so I'm probably going to read this soon as well, since it's just the recipe of a book that I can devour in like 1 or 2 days. Relationship between the two women that she's with, it's just hard to figure out because they're basically strangers, so we don't know what their relationship is going to turn out to be once they have found out this camp that they were supposed to go to has completely burned down with no survivors and they're stranded on an island. I don't know if it's going to be like a female Lord of the Flies situation or whatnot, but I'm intrigued. We're on to the final 2. Next is Cultish. This one, I'm not surprised that I liked it. I'm surprised that I liked it this much. It's very easy to read, even for nonfiction. I feel like, personally, nonfiction is kind of like a slog. It's just like a lot of words, but this one is conveyed in a really like conversationalist manner. It's very easy to read, so I'm excited to pick it up. I'm surprised that so many of the nonfictions are actually ranked quite highly, except for 12-Week Year, and even that one wasn't that bad. I gave it a 6.75. That's so annoying. Oh, what the fuck? Oh, my bad. So above The Lake House, but under Cultish, is Black Friend. This one, I just like reading about POC experiences, so I feel like I'm going to really like this. Obviously, I'm not Black, but I'm very interested in seeing what she has to say on the matter. I feel like some of our experiences probably are going to overlap. I think it would be cool to read about those kinds of similarities in our upbringing and how we're perceived by the world. Back to Cultish, I really like the parallels I can draw from like the language of fanaticism and cults to K-pop, which I am a very big fan of, so that was a little bit humbling, but I'm still very interested in reading what she has to say on the topic. Last, but certainly not least, because this ranked the highest, I gave this a 10, was All About Love by Bell Hooks. It's just like, she wrote this so long ago. Well, let's not be facetious. She wrote this in 2001. These still apply today. Like, I think everything I read in the first chapter still applies to this day in 2024. Yeah, I'm just interested in reading what she has to say about love. I feel like learning more on the topic of love is never going to be a bad thing, especially as someone who is single. It's just a lot of cool things to learn about this thing that makes us so human. And that's everything I have for this video. Thank you so much if you made it to this point. This is probably going to be a long video as well. I keep doing that by accident. I just keep making long videos, which is really not like beneficial for growth, but I'm having a lot of fun, so that's the most important part. Let me know if there are any of the books that I read that you got interested in as well. Let me know if there are any books that you really like that you think I should read. This experiment was honestly super helpful because I always feel like there is the kind of difficulty for me personally of reading. I feel like it takes a lot of energy for me to crack open a book and start reading, but then when I actually start reading, I just am absorbed in reading. Like, I can do it for several hours at a time. It's just like the jumping off point to actually opening the book and reading it is a lot for me sometimes, when I can just like turn on my phone and just like scroll through YouTube or Instagram or whatever. But yeah, if there are any books that you are kind of finding difficult to read, I would also recommend just reading the first chapter, seeing what it's like. If you don't like it, then you can drop it, you can return it. If you do really like it, then that's incentive for you to continue reading it. Alright, that's all for me for now. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!